Spotify CEO Daniel Ek, who we almost nominated, almost a little bitch Daniel Ek, he said that he's going to put up a thing where artists can only, he's like, is he going to introduce it or whatever?
Not really. It's just like he was interviewed by a music publication.
That he was going to make artists release an album once every 3 to 4 years.
Well, not exactly. It's basically he was asked about like the state of the music industry kind of thing. And being the CEO of Spotify, that's a pretty decent conversation. But he was asked, it was brought up as to why is it so difficult for most artists who are on streaming platforms to make more than fractions of a penny per play on their music.
That's the big thing.
And the big thing that came out of that was basically Ek claiming that there's a narrative fallacy between like how the music industry works. In Daniel Ek's defense, he says, to paraphrase essentially, that Spotify has actually opened up the floodgates so that more people can make more money. It used to be like there'd be a top 40 artists on iTunes and they're the ones making the most of the money. Now, according to Daniel Ek, it's like that's more like 400 people who are like getting a lot of that credit there. That still is nothing to say for like how easy it is for, or how difficult it is for up and coming artists to be able to get to that same level. Because not everyone has like, Daniel Ek used Taylor Swift as an example of a great like album launch, and it's like, yeah, dude, no shit.
And it's like she's one of the top artists in the world.
Yeah, one of the top artists in the world. So top that some of her previous albums were exclusive to other platforms.
Yes,
she was able to do exclusivity deals back when like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Tidal were doing those. But the main thing, which I think will pop out for Audioface listeners and especially for us, was Daniel Ek essentially saying that the idea, the facade, basically, this like false narrative that artists should take time in between their albums to work on their sound and own it before releasing it to the public is kind of like an old-timey thing, and that because of Spotify's new economic structure, it's a better process for artists to come out with songs every couple of weeks, every couple of months, just more of a constant flow. Yeah. The idea is you're connecting more with your audience, but Sean and I have talked about the pros and cons of that at length, and I'm sure we will here now. So what are your thoughts?
I definitely... A couple things. One, I know he said that he alleged that artists have said many times in private that they're happy with the royalties from Spotify. I don't know who the fuck he's talking to, but...
Probably Taylor Swift and Drake.
Taylor Swift and Drake, and Kanye West maybe. Somewhere out in Wyoming. Anyways, with a lot of those artists, they're still like... Example, a band like Dive is not going to be making nearly as many royalties as Taylor Swift. Whatever, they're barely going to be breaking the bank in that, but they make tremendous music.
Yeah.
They still have a good following, maybe like 1 million listeners, just under 1 million listeners enough, but the economics of that, they're barely making any money off of that. So that's one thing I definitely disagree with in that regard. The other thing is that my prime example, Radiohead. They release an album every
3-4 years.
3-4 years. I mean, it's been 4.5 years since the Moonshaped Pool, and they're still one of the best bands in the world. And they take time to do like other projects and other things naturally, but when they come back together, they make their own albums, and it takes a long time for them to do it. So there are bands that are prevalent, who have been prevalent doing that forever, and they still make great music. It depends on the artist, because some of them prefer to like do little singles here and there all the time. I mean, look at the Gorilla Song Machine right now. I think it's actually a good idea for Gorillaz to do that, because it's something where they don't release something every like 8 to 12 months, but it's nice to get a little bit of a different sound every couple of months, depending on what it is. Yeah. But then you have the opposite side of the spectrum, where you get like a lot of trap artists where they release an album every 8 months, and it's like 3 hours long of the album that keeps going. Drake, who keeps releasing music and it just gets watched out. Yeah. Future, whatever.
Like Drake releases a new album every single year, and it's essentially the same 17 songs over and over again. It hasn't changed that much since. If you're reading this, it's too late. I haven't really noticed the sound change too much.
And that's the big thing with artists is if you can change your sound in a year, which is extremely hard to do, or whatever, and if you can create 2 albums in that, which is, again, very hard to do, then that's fine. But most artists, you need to take that time. I mean, granted, it could be 2 years. It could be 3, it could be whatever it is. But, like, example, Arctic Monkeys took 5 years between AM and Tranquility Base, and they made a fantastic record, but completely switched their sounds.
If I could devil's advocate for a little bit here.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of the bands you mentioned, Arctic Monkeys, Radiohead, you're right on that trajectory where they take a couple years in between albums. They usually have touring cycles back when that was a thing. And they can come back. I think that comparison is actually a little bit closer to even like the Taylor Swift and Drake thing. Because we're still talking about artists who came up and were established pre-streaming age. So I think the better analogy, or like the thing we should analyze, is what's happening like 2013 and after with bands who like were starting then and after. So you have like the SoundCloud trap and rap cohort, which is just really bad. Like Offset and Drake can make multiple songs, like Gucci Mane, for example. Gucci Mane's a great example.
Oh my god,
2 or 3 albums a year. I mean, he's like a staple of trap music, but like he's a staple of trap music more for what he did in 2008, 2010, that kind of stuff, when he was still in jail and still like putting out albums. That's like a thing. But like now Gucci Mane's records, they're not. Like we have a chance to review 2 or 3 Gucci Mane records a year on Audioface.
And there's no reason to.
We haven't since Elgato: The Human Equation, because they're all the same. And so I wonder what it's like right now for a new artist. Maybe if you're a new artist, unless you break out like Billie Eilish and you're just like a smash hit, it probably isn't feasible for you to. And by breaking out and Billie Eilish being a smash hit, you also get the things outside of streaming that supplement your income. Whether you're selling merch or you're doing sponsorships or ads or things like that, that starts to supplement. And then you start to use your music as a brand to build, and you sell your brand more than you sell the music. Like that's why Jay-Z and Beyonce are wealthy off of branding Cristal, not Cristal, but branding different stuff and not.
Because you have like she has Ivy Park, which is her fashion line. You have a bunch of other things. I think there was one thing I wanted to get to was with newer artists. It just depends on if they, for the Billie Eilish route or whomever, and they explode up, then that's one thing. But if it takes a while for other artists, it just depends. Because usually what you see with established artists like Arctic Monkeys, they release an album every year for a couple of years, or like every year and a half maybe, because they needed to. But again, that's why I said that year is about good for me. But once you get into where you do I don't need Woptober 18 like every damn 3 months or something. Or again, I like the singles route where you release a song every like maybe month, 2 months, or something like that.
I was gonna say the good example is indie, because like you have artists like Biba Doobie, you have artists who are like a Japanese house, so we've talked about in Audioface, where they have like a slower. They still release music, singles and EPs throughout the year. You might get like an EP or 2 from someone like Biba Doobie, but you'll still wait a year and a half for an album. And there's a difference between those EPs, those drops that we have on Audioface, and those albums. So to grant Daniel Ek a little bit of something, yes, as with everything, you add technology and the internet to a market, and then that changes the market a little bit. For sure. It changes all the dynamics. And so I think for newer artists, something similar to like Biba Doobie, Japanese House, or even Song Machine, where you release not every single month like Song Machine, but periodically to build your fan base and give them stuff.
Look at Japanese House. She started in like 2013, 2014, and her first official LP, her first official album was last year. So she took a long time into it, but she would drop EPs once a year, basically, of like 2-3 songs, and they were always fantastic in that regard. So I think again, it depends on the artist. Usually, like a bigger artist, I say take your time, because you already have that established wealth. Usually, you have like already an established timeline of music that you've already made and stuff. So then it usually takes a while for you to change your sound and stuff. Newer artists, it depends, because most artists in general, when they start out, they pump out a lot of stuff because they try and sell records. Maybe look at Kendrick Lamar, Arctic Monkeys, for example, as well. They pump out as much as they can because they need to just create a business for themselves naturally and get in the market. And then once they establish it, then they can take their time and do it. So yes and no, it just depends. There's so many variables within it. So, but Daniel Ek is still a cuck, and I hate him for saying most artists in private say that they like their shares. Fuck off.
Artists who won't go on the record say they enjoy the way they're being treated by Spotify. Take, for example, Taylor Swift. It's like these are CEO arguments. I was just watching. I was watching the tech CEOs speak in front of Congress, and like, no politics. I'm going to stop right here. But it was essentially the CEOs saying, "Well, I understand you think we're doing the wrong thing, but we think we're doing the right thing." And it's like, yeah, that's the fucking point. It's not exactly like. It's about listening to the perspective that is outside of where you work to kind of get how it's how you get feedback. It's how you take feedback. If you're a smart CEO, let's say, you will take outside feedback. But if you get to a certain size, you don't have to take outside feedback, and that's when monopoly powers become a thing. But that's where I stop on the politics.